My name is Lorenzo, and I am a father. I am a graduate from Cal State Long Beach with the bachelor's degree in social work. I'm also a case manager here at the foundation.
I am Joseph Knaack, and I am a National Accounts Manager for ADT Multifamily.
My name is Maegan Lujan. I'm a Director of Solutions and Services for Toshiba. I've had the opportunity to be in tech for a little over a decade. You could look on my walls and check out some magazine racks, and you'd see that I'd have amazing awards and accolades for the things that I have done professionally. But the truth is, that's not the person that I am behind this smile. That person started with a broken home.
My name's Barry McManus. I'm the president and owner of Klein Products. I'm also a husband to an amazing wife. I'm a father to 3 fantastic young sons. I have 2 beautiful daughter-in-laws, and now I have 3 adorable grandkids. I'm also a former foster child.
My name is Casandra Williams. I'm an Orange County local, Orange County business owner, an investor, an adventure seeker, a philanthropist, a community leader, and I am a foster youth.
When I was about 8 or 9 years old, my dad left us. Not long after that, within the next year, my mom passed away. Before she passed away, she made arrangements for me to be taken care of. The Klein family, this amazing family, stepped up, accepted me into their home, and they took care of me.
Without a mom and without a dad, without the normal things that you think a child would need as they were growing up, there wasn't those picturesque Christmas moments and new school clothes and all of that type of stuff. I'm one of 5 siblings. My older brother aged out. My sister got adopted. Me and my little brothers jumped back and forth into foster care. And my father was in San Quentin in prison most of my life. So, those fractures in my home led us into foster care.
My mother had a lot of mental and emotional issues. She was a drug addict, drug dealer, suffered from economic and housing instability, abuse that led to, when I was 12, being pulled out of my home multiple times. No real explanation of why, what was happening, where I was. I was in homes I didn't know, cities I didn't know, and I tried to emancipate out of the situation I was in, but I couldn't hold down a job long enough. And at one point when I was young and not 18 yet, I married out.
20 years ago, I started a life of drug addiction and everything that came along with that, and that was including ties into local gangs. So my lifestyle very much involved in and out of incarceration, years of homelessness, and just a lot of dead ends, just due to my bad decisions and not having any guidance, not having any resources, not knowing where to find any resources. Even at the little moments where I wanted to find help, I had no idea where to even begin to look. My perception of treatment and rehabilitation was you had to have a lot of money to be able to go get help.
And as a child, I was happy, cheerful, curious, and full of questions. And at the early age of 2, I was adopted by my grandparents because my mom was an unfit mother. She was dealing with drug issues, trouble with the law, and my grandparents were there to sacrifice their golden years to not only adopting me, but my sister and my 2 cousins, because our parents followed similar paths. Life was good. I think the quote, "ignorance is bliss," resonates really well because I didn't know we were poor. I didn't know we were different. My grandparents did a great job at covering us from those feelings or those thoughts. So it wasn't until middle school where I realized that my family was different. My life was different. Why didn't I have a mom and dad in the home? Why didn't I have my grandparents coming to sporting events like all the other kids? And At that point, I began to question and like have these thoughts and emotions that I couldn't really understand and process fully, which caused me to retaliate in school, get in trouble with the law, get in trouble at home, to the point where those compounding behaviors and the ways of processing that emotion leading into like where I would say is one of my rock bottom moments, where like a little bit after high school, I lost my mom, I got kicked out of my grandparents' house, I was fired from my job, and my girlfriend at the time broke up with me. So all that happened within like a 3-week time frame. And coincidentally, shortly after, that's when I was introduced to Orangewood, but I realized, hey, get your shit together. Like, you gotta do what you gotta do to become the hero you needed growing up. So what you're doing now isn't gonna get you there.
As a kid, I think I kind of always felt like an adult because I was always responsible for my mom. I was always responsible for my sister.
I first felt like an adult when I started to learn how to take accountability for my own actions, understanding that I'm responsible for my own behavior and the outcomes of those behaviors and those decisions.
When I chose to take control over my path forward, that all started with having a little bit of vision for who I could become.
I'm about 12 years old. Dick and Dorothy Klein had to have a talk with me. They told me that there was rumors that my dad had returned and he was going to come and get me. During that conversation, they wanted me to know that with whatever happened, they loved me. I'd become part of their family. And that evening, they asked me if it would be okay for them to adopt me. And I said no. And in reflection, I look back at that moment, and I was 12 years old. I had just started to make a name for myself. I was a pretty good student, pretty good athlete, was popular, and I just didn't want to have a label. I just wanted to be normal. I wanted to fit in. So I said no. And I think that was the first time I really made an adult decision and became an adult.
So what I used to think being an adult was, the models that I had, the role models I had, growing up were gang members and drug dealers, the guy who had the nice car and the nice rims and a lot of drugs, that's what I was mimicking my behaviors to be like, So now I take from the guys who I've learned from, who have gone through what I went through, and now I see what adulthood really is about, is responsibility and accountability for me.
I think growing up and having the experience that I did being in the foster system made me realize time is limited here on this earth. So create as best of an experience as you can with the people you interact with, because you really never know, one, what that person's going through, and two, if they're ever going to think about you again in the future, and if that impact you had was a positive or negative experience.
You go through this survivor mindset and you realize that you don't have the same foundation in education that a lot of people have. You don't have the same resources and the support. Having not gone to college, you don't have the alumni and the connections to get you into the workforce. So there's just this inner seam attached to becoming an adult that traditional foster youth don't get through their upbringing.
I was fortunate enough to have a great foster family, the Klein family, who took care of me and brought me up. And they really demonstrated for me and helped me understand what it meant to become an adult. They encouraged me and inspired me through good times and bad to be resilient and to keep pushing forward and to make good decisions.
I have had tons of mentors and individuals who have become leaders in my life, and one of those is who I call my uncle. His name is Chris Harrington. He actually picked me up and helped me out when I was in a time of need in like middle school time frame, when I started to realize that life was different for me. And he instilled hard work, work ethic, commitment, communication into me as a young child, and that's where I got my entry into real estate property management.
I wouldn't be who I am now without the community that I sought and that found me. I think the benefit of having been an entrepreneur early on is there are a lot of resources actually for business owners that maybe aren't out there.
Throughout my career, there have been different folks that have come in and kind of put me behind their wing and cultivated me. Most of that came through professional and personal development. Along the way, I would meet people who had, a little bit of knowledge that they could share, and I tried to be a sponge in those moments, absorb it in, and just figure out how to utilize that knowledge go forward in my life.
I would say would be people like my mentors. Because of the case managers and the counselors and the therapists that helped me out early in my struggle and early in my journey, that it made me want to pay it forward and even pay it back. I decided to major in social work, and in 2 years, I just recently graduated from Cal State Long Beach with the social work degree, and I interned here for a full year, and I think within a couple of months, they offered me a position, and as soon as I graduated, I signed on the dotted line, and now I'm a case manager for a program that's doing wonderful things here at the foundation and helping the youth, honestly, that are just like me when I was in my early 20s, searching for direction, searching for mentorship, searching for resources. So if I can help these youth not go through what I went through in my early 20s, and that's what I'm here for. I come here and I always share with my friends, like, I don't feel like I'm coming to work. It doesn't feel like I work a day in my life, because it's just a great place to be at, and the work that we do here with all the programs, not just mine, but with all the programs, so valuable to our communities. And I know that if I can share, I do share these with some of my friends and their youth and their kids, across the county, because of the great things that the Orangewood Foundation does. And it's an amazing place, and I feel like I found a home base here, and I'm excited to see what the future holds.
There's a lot of memories that I have specifically with my mom, where thinking back on it, like, wow, no kid should have those memories, and that's a bummer that those are the only memories I have with my mom. But I realized it helped me get through a lot of tough things at an early age, to where now I think I'm more prepared for anything that life handles me. And part of being an adult is just that constant curiosity and learning and improving on how you could be a better version of yourself.
Life wasn't always easy. Growing up where I grew up at, a lot of times that, I went without what the other kids have. Many times it was a luxury for me to get a day at McDonald's, or, a weekend at Chuck E. Cheese. That was like a birthday event.
Key memories of childhood for me were just continuous uncertainty, instability, lack of agency over my life, lack of having nurturing and support. It was a little bit scary and a little bit lonely. My childhood didn't have the typical normal, like there weren't birthday parties, there wasn't family, sometimes there wasn't a house to live in, and there wasn't a mom coming home and baking cupcakes and hugging, and there was a lot of separation from my sister. Separation from myself.
Through my experiences as a youth and as growing up and transitioning into society as an adult, it's hard. It's really hard. There are so many, I call them lightning bolts, things you don't expect, losses, challenges. And you just have to be resilient. I was fortunate, I had somebody to help me. But you've got to be able to bounce back no matter what, and you got to keep pushing forward.
When you leave foster care, you take everything that you experienced and you put it in a tight box, and you label caution tape over it, and you pack it as far as you possibly can away. Because you don't want it to be touched, you don't want it to be opened, you don't want to be looked at through a fishbowl and asked questions. I know growing up in business, I always was afraid of those icebreaker questions. Where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to college? Where did you live? Tell me about your parents. I didn't have the right answer for those. In fact, I had the worst answers. And sometimes in sales, which was the role that I had, those kind of answers can kill deals. So I didn't tell people many of those things. But It wasn't until I started coming alongside Orangewood through some of their educational programs that they started to use words like parentifying. And I started to learn and get educated more about the life that I had through different words and vernacular that I wasn't trained to understand. And so I've learned that, you know, I tend to be that go-getter who goes out and figures out the problem and solves the problem. And that's exactly who I am at Toshiba. I also learned that sometimes with the wrong people, that's enablement. And that's me solving problems for them that they need to solve on their own. And so part of that comes from this foster youth mindset of me wanting to protect them and allowing them to have their innocence, and me take on all of the work and not allow for them to feel what it's like to lose their innocence as a child so young.
Even today, there's moments where I still feel like a child. Sometimes when I'm sitting there thinking about my growing up, you know, my experiences, it takes me back there mentally maybe. Or sometimes when, you know, I am going about my business and, you know, I make a mistake and I have to call my sponsor or, you know, one of my close friends and maybe share with them. It's like, dang, I made a mistake, I messed up, right? It still kind of gives me that little ping of like, okay, I'm still a work in progress. I'm still growing today, even at 41 years old. You know, I'm not done growing, I'm not done learning, and we all can have it within us to feel that way sometimes.
So I am constantly curious, I'm constantly cheerful, and I think that those emotions that I had when I was younger are deep and will last with me through adulthood. And it's important for me to never lose that curiosity, that cheerfulness, and just always be happy, because that causes me to grow. And I think part of being an adult is never losing sight of that childhood, those childhood emotions, but also constantly growing and learning about yourself and how to become the best version you can.
There are definitely moments now where I feel more like a child because I've moved from that survivor mindset to thriving. I've found a way to unlock my heart by giving back, and I think that inner child in me is just screaming to just be whimsical and to be free, because it has been a fight or flight, you know, kind of life for me growing up the way that I did. I now realize that I have the ability to give back, and I think that I'm finding a lot of joy in learning what that means to me and how to do that.
As a 12-year-old foster child, I declined adoption, but continued to live with this amazing foster family. Through the years, our relationships grew and they strengthened. I knew my foster father cared for me. I knew he loved me, but I always knew I was a guest in the house. He was strict, he was strong, he was serious about business, but I knew that he cared for me. We shared a common business associate who called me one day. He wanted to know why I never was adopted. And I told him the story about when I was 12 and I declined. He said, well, what about now? Would you want to be adopted now? I thought about it for a minute and I said, you know, I do. I really want to be adopted. So he said, I'm going to call you back. I got to make a phone call. So 10 minutes later, my phone rings and it's my dad on the phone, and he was bawling. He said he's wanted to adopt me every day since that day I was 12 years old when I declined. So the next week, we went to the courthouse and I was adopted. 48 years old, I was adopted. At 12 years old, I became an adult. And 48 years old, I became a kid again.
Being a foster youth is not who I am, but it is where I came from. Where there was once only confusion and meaninglessness, now has purpose. With all I have accomplished from where I came from and all my journey in between, I am proud to say, it is my roots that I am a foster youth, but look at the wings I have grown.